Today is July 25th, 2013 at 10 a.m. and we're sitting with Kristi Hankins.
All right. If you don't mind, starting with where you were born in your early life, we could start there.
Okay. I was born in Oxnard, California, on a naval base.
Okay.
My family homesteaded in Maybelle, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And then when my grandmother, my dad's mother, married Jim McIntyre, he lived in Dolores, Colorado. And so they grew up in Dolores, Colorado. My mom grew up in Cortez, Colorado, which was like Hayden and Craig, just a few miles away from each other. So that's how my parents actually met. But my grandparents always lived here. My great-grandparents always lived here. So we came back here, and when my grandparents, Edna and Jim McIntyre, got divorced, she came home. And so my parents followed after my dad was in the military. I was born on the California coast, and my sister was born in Rhode Island 3 years later. So we kind of traveled a little bit there, and then right after that, Dad came home. And he did construction forever. My mom was 15 when she got pregnant with me. My dad was 18. And they just had the can-do attitude, and that's what they did. They got married in May, and I was born in August. And that year in, I believe it was October, my dad went in the military. He'd gone to 1 year of school in Trinidad, Colorado, in college, and then he went in the military, and Dad went to the South Pole. He was a CB, which is an elite group of construction workers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my dad's a CB, so they went to the South Pole for the winter over. So they got very little mail and all kinds of stuff because you couldn't go in during certain times of the year. So he was there for an entire year and then came home, and I didn't know who he was. I was born in August, and he left shortly after that, so I think that was difficult for them.
Mm-hmm.
But they made it work, and then a few more years when he was in the military, my mom was with him after that. And then shortly after, I believe they bought the house on 6th Street in 1970, so my sister would have been about a year old. And we lived in that house when I started kindergarten. We could walk out the back yard through the gate, and there was my school. And my mom worked at the lunch program. But my dad worked for G.E. Johnson Construction. They actually built the new library. It's not new now, but the library and the high school. And I believe they did a remodel on Sunset School and the middle school when I was growing up. So my dad always worked locally until I went to high school. And then when I was in high school, my dad went to Colorado Springs with the company. And he'd stay down there during the week and come home on the weekends. And my mom stayed here because we'd started school here.
Mm-hmm.
We were gonna finish here, so we both did.
Right.
My sister graduated in 1988, and I graduated in 84. And then they lived in Avon for quite a few years after my sister graduated, and then came back home a few years later when the grandkids started coming.
All right.
That's when Michaela was born in 1988, my oldest daughter, and they were home shortly after that. I think they were home by 1990.
Okay.
So, my mom's worked as a school district the entire time. That's her career. She started with the lunch program at Sunset, and then she became a teacher's aide, Title I reading aide, when I was in 5th grade. And then when they built Ridgeview School out there, my mom went out there as an aide and worked there the whole entire time until they went to Avon. And then Mom worked in a preschool and at the school district there. Then they were in Colorado Springs, and she worked at the school district there. And then she came back and is still working at the school district here.
Gosh.
My dad retired almost 2 years ago, so he stays home.
Right.
So he's the, I don't know, not daddy daycare, but I guess he's grandpa daycare. He helps get the grandkids back and forth to school and stuff. So.
Okay. What was school like for you here?
my parents were always in the school. So my mom was either there or my dad worked on one of the buildings. So one of my parents was there the whole entire time I was in school. It was kind of nice in a way, I guess. You know, if you needed anything, they were right there. But I was born on August 21st, so I was younger than most of the kids. We started school the 23rd or something. And so my junior year of high school, I was still 15. So, yeah, I was 15. And they were working on the new high school. And we had moved up there in 1982. So, I think it was 83. But my dad was working up there. They were still working on the building. My dad has a 1975 Dodge van. And he wasn't a hippie, but might as well been. But he drove to work every day, and they would park it. Well, they had started doing these parking passes for the students. So I get called into the office one day and told that I had been given a warning, and that I needed to take care of it and have a parking pass on my vehicle. And I tried to explain to them I didn't have a driver's license. Well, what they had done was pull the registration on the vehicle, and that was my parents, so they automatically assumed that I was the one driving it. And I got so frustrated having to tell them, I can't even drive, it's not me. So I finally went to find my dad and found him and said, you have to go in there and tell him because I'm in trouble because you don't have a parking pass. And he took care of it, but it was just, I'll never forget that. I was so embarrassed. I'm like, I can't even drive yet. Yeah, he got a kick out of that too. But I don't know, Dad was always real quiet. He never went to, wasn't real confrontational, but that day he was pretty funny. And it was Jim Fate. I'll never forget that. And after that and then Joe Janisak. And Joe, he was friends with my dad, and he goes, oh, that's so funny. They laughed about it for a long time, but I wasn't real active in sports or anything in school. I always had a job, so I just...
Where did you work?
I worked at the movie theater when I was 16.
For what?
And we had a drive-in when I was a kid, and the same guy owned it.
Where was it?
It's out east of town.
Okay.
If you're going, do you know where Moms and Pops is?
No.
There's a barbecue place out there. But if you look right behind that, the screen is still up.
Oh,
the drive-in
that's
screen.
the barbecue pit?
Yeah, it's kind of right there. I don't even know what it's called anymore. It's changed hands a few times.
Okay.
If you're going to Steamboat, and then, I'm trying to think what else is in there. You go past the tire place and all that stuff, and it's on the right-hand side. And the screen's still there.
I think we've seen that.
And, yeah, so we had a drive-in. So we got to work out there. But you couldn't work out there till you were 16. Because the lady that was managing the place, she didn't want to go out, so you had to be able to drive out there. So, but we could all drive. And then, so I worked in here part-time and at the drive-in part-time. But of course the drive-in was only during the summer, so that was the summer of my junior year, I guess. And then after that, we had a Dairy Queen in the mall, and I worked there. And there was a bunch of us. We weren't real good friends at first, but we became really good friends, and we're still friends. So that's kind of neat. And then I got my first job out of high school at a bank.
Just to rewind a little bit, can you talk about your childhood and what you remember about Craig and, when you first came in 1970? Or no, you bought the house.
My parents did, yeah. My parents live on 6th Street. And Sunset School, like I said, is right behind them. Well, right there at the end where the senior citizens apartments are now, I don't know if you know where they are. They're actually Ledford Street.
Yeah.
Ledford Street all the way to where Murdoch's is now was a big field.
Oh,
when
wow.
I was a kid. There were irrigation dishes and stuff on the other side.
Right.
And I don't remember who owned them or anything, but the mall wasn't there, none of that. So it was just big fields. So we lived on a dead end. So I learned to ride my bicycle there on 6th Street. My parents, they taught us how to ride our bikes there. We had Rollins's, Ina, and I can never remember his name because we always called him Mr. Rollins. They lived across the street, and they were Mormon, and they had a slew of kids. And then right next to them was another Mormon family that had a whole bunch of kids. And then we had a Baptist family across the street on the other side. So I definitely remember that because it was almost like we grew up Catholic. So, you know, the war of the religions, I don't know, it was just funny. But they had kids all our ages, or close, you know, within a few years. But we rode our bicycles there, and we got to go over to the school, and we could play on the playground equipment and stuff. Like I said, my parents, my family, my dad's brothers, they all lived. Dan lived here, but Pat and Gary didn't. But they would come for Christmas and holidays and stuff, and they would flood a section of the playground behind the house. And so from about Thanksgiving till Christmas, you could ice skate out there. And I remember everybody going and my family drank a lot, so they'd all get to drinking and then they'd go ice skating. So yeah, it was definitely humorous. But we would, every holiday the family was together, and my grandparents were there. My grandma, my great-gram, we called her Gram. And I didn't find out till a few years ago, actually, that why we called her Gram. We called her Gram. Her mother was Effie Bruin Hunt, and they called her Gram.
Oh.
So then, by the time, of course, I was born and everything, they weren't alive. But because her mom was a Gram, she was a Gram.
Right.
It was kind of neat. But she didn't die till I was 15. So for the first 15 years of my life, I knew my grandmother and my great-grandmother, and it was amazing. I mean, the stories that she would tell, and I think that's why I like the history so much. She was amazing. They only had one daughter, Edna McIntyre, which is my dad's mom, and then she passed away in 1980, I think 79, 80, somewhere in there. And my grandma was never the same. My grandma was never the same after her mom died. We went on one family vacation the whole entire time I remember in my life. And we got home, and we had this little neighbor. She was so cute, Mrs. Burke. She comes running out in her nightgown and her curlers, and you never see Mrs. Burke like that. And there's a hedge between our houses, and she hollered at Mom and Dad and said, "You need to call Dan." And my grandmother had died a couple hours before we actually got home.
Oh.
So that was kind of crazy. But I don't remember anything about the vacation after that. I don't remember going. I don't remember anything about it. But then things were kind of rough after that. My dad ended up putting my grandma in a nursing home a few years after that because she just couldn't take care of herself. She was mad at him. Oh, she mad. But she lived a couple of blocks from us, actually a couple blocks over, Blevins Apartments.
Oh, right.
She lived in there, my gram did, after my grandma died. And we would go spend the weekends with her, my sister and I would. And we looked forward to that. I looked forward to that more than I think probably anything that I remember as being a kid. My parents weren't partiers or anything like that, but about once a week we'd go stay with my grandma, and she'd take us to the grocery store. That was the coolest thing in the whole world. We'd go to the grocery store, and you got to pick out what you wanted to eat. And she made the most amazing breakfast. I mean, you could have everything you wanted for breakfast. You could have oatmeal pancakes, bacon, and sausage, and toast, and she made big breakfast, and it was always so awesome. And she had play clothes. We would go, and she had the most amazing, I think they were actually her clothes, now that I look back on it. But she had this, I think it was a suitcase, and it was full of all these clothes. And they had the coolest old-time hats with the little lace on the front, the net and everything. And we would play dress-up for hours. And there was a Murphy bed in the apartment, and that's what we got to sleep on.
Okay.
So it was really cool. And her downstairs neighbors were Earl and Mabel Levin. And they were the coolest old people. They just were so cute. And she'd make us Rice Krispie treats. Isn't it funny how you associate food with all this stuff?
Yeah.
But they were just awesome people too. So we got to know them, and we got to know her friends, and we would go and eat lunch with her friends and stuff. And I mean, this was up until the time she actually went and nursed.
Right.
And then when I was a little girl, I don't know how old I was, but I know my sister was there. I'm thinking between 8 and 10, we went down here to the Cabby, and we used to eat down there. Well, she used to let us get shrimp cocktail. And we'd have chocolate milk or whatever we wanted and shrimp cocktail. We would sit at the bar. Of course, you know, when you're little, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we would sit at the bar, and she would sit there, and we would talk and do our thing. And this man came in, and he sat down, and he was talking to her and everything, and she introduced us. And I remember her introducing us and everything. Not thinking a word, not thinking anything about it, all of it. And I found out years later, it was John Wayne. He had a ranch in Wyoming, so he would come through here. And
John Wayne.
Yes, and he knew my gram. So we would eat lunch with him and everything, and I didn't know who he was.
How many times did that happen?
Probably twice.
John Wayne.
Goodness.
And I never even didn't
Wow.
really know.
That's so cool.
So then years later, my dad told me that there was actually a photograph of John Wayne that was taken somewhere, and that he had signed the back of it. So a few years ago, I went into the Golden Cabby and asked about it, and the girl had told me that the photograph was still there, but it had been taken out because they had a fire. So she actually pulled it out for me, and I actually do recall seeing it in there. But he had signed the back of it, and it's still in there. So it was kind of cool.
Goodness.
But my husband is so grouchy at me. He says, "You ate lunch with John Wayne, and you didn't even know it."
Yeah.
Well, you were young, right? You were.
And
how
we
old
didn't
were you?
watch westerns. 8, 10, somewhere in there, you know.
Right.
And we didn't watch westerns. My dad never watched that stuff, so I didn't even know who he was.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Now,
Really
boy,
neat.
what I would give to have a conversation with him would be okay.
Yeah.
So where would you go to lunch? And
The Golden Cabby's right down here at the Baker House.
Oh my
Yeah, that was always great fun too.
At the Golden what? I'm sorry.
The Golden Cabby.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. CAVVY. It's, yeah. And I guess somebody told me that means a group of horses.
Oh.
Is
Group
what Cabby
of
stands
horses.
for. Yes. Somebody in here told me that. It might have been Jan. But yeah, that's a really
neat.
cool old building. If you ever get the opportunity to go through there, you should.
But the picture's still up, they?
It was, yeah.
It was.
Oh
Yeah.
my
They
goodness.
had done some remodeling and stuff, but it's still there. But yeah, I remember that was too cool.
My
Yeah.
dad's gonna love hearing about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then my gram, she had 6 sisters.
Uh-huh.
My great grandma did. So they all lived here. So we knew all of them. And Merle Hunt was her sister, and she married Earl Wilson, and they lived up the street from us when I was a kid also. And Merle was a teacher in the rural schools. And then she had, of course, retired by the time I was old enough to know her, but they lived down the street, and she was probably the one, between her and my mom, my sister and I loved to read. And she introduced us to books. She had a collection of books at her house that was just awesome. And she gave us a book when we were little. It was one of our favorites, my sister and I both. Little Black Sambo. And we had read that book, and I think my mom still has it. But I bet it's just worn to pieces because we read it so many times. But they would read to us. And they called each other Mama and Papa. And they were old then, you know, but they were so cute. And it was my great grandma's sister.
Right.
But we knew all of them. And then my Aunt Blanche, she was my great aunt also. She through working through here, I found out a lot of things about her. She'd been married quite a few times and stuff, and her son had told me she's what they call a rounder, because I guess she got around. It was so funny when he told me that day. And I kind of heard that, but I didn't really know.
Right.
And then some of the older people that come in here will get to talking, and they ask you about your family, and I tell them the Hunt sisters, and they know exactly who you're talking about. But I guess Blanche helped with a couple of the boarding houses, the rooming houses, and I guess there were rumors of things that were going on, but nobody ever comes right out and says it. I don't know if it's because of me or not, but so I get a big kick out of that. But yeah, and we knew I mean, we knew my dad's cousins, and it's just, the family's really deep, so we knew a lot of them. And it wasn't until I got older, of course, that I wish I'd have paid a little more attention, because the things that they could have told me were amazing.
Right.
And then in 2005, my dad and I got a family reunion together. It's kind of strange. My gram, his name was Adelaide Vaughn, but her maiden name was Hunt. Her father homesteaded in Maybelle. Where the Maybelle Park is where they homesteaded.
Right.
Charles Hunt and Eugene Hunt were brothers. So he would have been my great-great-uncle. He was one of the first Moffat County commissioners. He was on all kinds of stuff. He was very active, actually, and more so than my great-great-grandfather. But they had one son, and then Charles and Effie had 6 daughters, so it was just amazing. But so my gram married a boy from Maybelle, and his name was Leonard Vaughn. And the Vaughns homesteaded in Sunbeam.
Okay.
And my great-grandfather was actually born in Sunbeam. So their family roots are just crazy. There. And then the two of them got married, and it was crazy. Leonard was born in Sunbeam in 1893. And then my grandmother, their daughter, was born in Sunbeam in I don't remember. 1919, I think. And then my gram was born in Iowa. 3 of the daughters were born in Iowa before they actually came over.
Right.
And but then my grandma Edna was born in Sunbeam also in 1919. So he was born in 1893. My grandma was born in 1899, and then my grandma was born in 1919. So it was all kind of weird. But so they're crazy. I mean, the roots that way are just astronomical. I mean, and then having all those kids and everything, it was pretty wild. And then, but I went to the Maybelle Cemetery a few years ago. Just curious, I guess, more than anything. And my great-grandfather, I didn't know it at the time, but I was walking through there, and there was a Westlake, which is my great-great-great-grandmother's father. And I found a story in here in the museum on what happened to him. He actually died a little bit before Christmas. He'd come out to see them and had a heart attack and fell right down in the chair and was dead. So they buried him. He's in Maybelle Cemetery. And then there was also Edna Vaughn. Well, that's my grandma's name.
Right.
So it was really strange. So I didn't know anything about her. So that's when I started doing some research. And my grandfather Leonard had a sister named Edna Mae Vaughn. And she had died when she was 13 of appendicitis. So she's buried in Maybelle. Then right over from her, there's a Mary Vaughn. And I was like, okay, where does she fit in? Well, did some more research there. It would be my great uncle's, his name's Harold, but they called him J.C. Vaughn. He was married to a gal named Mary Maudlin. And he and Mary had 2 children, and right shortly, I think it was within a month or 2 of their second child being born, she died from complications of childbirth. So she's the Mary that's buried in Maybelle. So I did find out who my 3 there were. And in Maybelle, you take care of your own. That's what those little gals will tell you. And it's your responsibility to clean up around there. They're pretty few, but... So I kind of just started that way. And then, but a lot of things made sense then. My grandma's name, as far as why she had the name that she did, and it was pretty neat.
Right.
And I like doing that anyway. I'll go to the cemetery and wander. My family thinks it's weird, but they're starting to go with me.
It's interesting, all the clues you found in one cemetery.
It was crazy. It was awesome, though. I mean, and then we went out with the Boy Scouts, must have been 2 years ago. There's a women's group in Maybelle, and they're all, and when I say older, I'm talking 70 to 90, this group of women that take care of the cemetery. And they go out right before Memorial Day and they clean. I mean, they take down all the old flowers and all this stuff and clean it up. Well, that was the year that I had been out there, so I went to help and was cleaning up everything. And Mary Vaughn has this concrete, like, border around the top of her grave, I guess. There's a hole at the end of it. This critter was down in there. And I don't know what it was. I never did see it. But, so anyway, I filled it up with rocks and dirt and everything and covered the hole. Well, a few days later, I had been back down there for some reason, and I had gone down there again, and whatever was in it had to come out. Jim says I buried him in there, and he had to come back. But he was back in there, and there was a hole again. And I was so frustrated. It filled the hole back up again. And my youngest said to me finally one day, she says, "Mom, I don't think she cares now if she's sharing her space. Just leave it alone." So I haven't been out. I went earlier this year, but there was still snow, so.
It was like a little groundhog or something? Okay.
Yeah, it was crazy though. I was like, come on, get out of there. That's disrespectful. You know, and they're going, Mom, nobody cares. But I cared, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, that's fine.
So you were in high school when the boom happened? The big boom? What do you remember about that?
When the power plant came in.
Yes.
My dad worked on construction at the power plant.
Okay.
He worked, G.E. Johnson was also part of that.
Okay.
So Dad worked out there on the construction, setting things up and stuff. And, just being a kid and hearing the controversy about all the jobs it was going to create, and then the other people that they didn't want it. And then I actually, he worked out there just during the construction, but I don't think Dad ever worked at the power plant. Matter of fact, I don't think any of my family ever did, except me.
Right.
And then I started out there in 1990. I worked there for 13 years.
Oh, that's right.
And then I started out in the front office and then moved to maintenance and then went out to coal handling. Was out there till I left. But I remember the construction being a big thing. We didn't have a lot to do with the power plant, as far as my family did. But my dad worked construction, so, you know, the different buildings and stuff, they were all pretty thick and all that. So I just remember my mom's one of those people that she can balance a budget like nobody I've ever seen. And there was a lot of time in the wintertime my dad didn't work because of the weather. So she would, when he worked, she saved for when he didn't, and they took care of all of that. She always has. She took really good care of that.
What do you remember about school, like student population-wise during the boom? Do you remember an influx of students?
You know, I particularly don't, because it seems like most of the kids that I went to school with from the beginning.
Okay.
And a lot of them were just like me. Their families had come from here. I have one friend that I've had. I think she came in 4th grade, and we're still friends. And her parents, or her grandparents actually own property out by Trapper and all of that. I think that Grandpa Roberts actually owned property that might have been leased to the mine.
Oh.
So she actually, she's got.
Okay.
So, you know, they were all there. The Montoya kids, they lived around the corner. They'd been here forever. Steely's. Who else? Higginses. I mean, we started school together. There wasn't a lot of course, we would never see. I don't think I ever actually remember the whole entire time I was in high school ever seeing a black person. I mean, that would be a major thing for us, and it just didn't happen. I don't remember. I think there was 180, but I'm not positive. I think there was 180 people in my graduating class.
Oh, wow.
And then most of the people.
More than us.
And then most of they left. A lot of them didn't stay. There's very few that actually stayed. I'm not positive about that. I might be totally off bounds.
So when you graduated high school in '84, and then you said you started working at the power plant in '90. What did you do between those two?
Well, I got married for the first time.
Okay.
And then I worked at a financial service down here for, oh my gosh, probably 2 or 3 years, till Michaela was born.
Oh, okay.
And then I kind of worked here and there and didn't take things too serious for a while. And then when I went to work in 1990 at the power plant, and then I got divorced while I worked out there. And I married Jim in 1993.
Mm-hmm.
So Michaela was, well, when we got together, she was almost 4, and Rebecca was almost 3.
Mm-hmm.
So and Jim's family was not from here. He's from Arkansas. But I knew his mom. I worked at the bank with his mom.
Oh, okay.
And I had known her for years and years.
Mm-hmm.
And when he first wanted to date me, I was like, no way. He was a lot wilder than I was. His friends will still tell you that was the oddest match they'd ever seen. And I don't know exactly what it was, but he,
Mm-hmm.
it was weird.
Right.
And I don't know, I don't know that I'd say I knew, but he was different from anybody I'd ever met. And Jim's real outspoken.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't, if you don't want to know the truth, don't ask. Because I had to learn that the hard way. And we've had a lot of fun. He didn't like the genealogy or any of that. And we have had a great time going through his.
Oh, really?
It's amazing. And I actually connected with somebody on Ancestry that sent me a book about Jim's family. Because his family was really prominent in, I think it was Arkansas or Missouri. I'm not positive which one the book is from, but his family had slaves and all kinds of stuff, and we still laughed about that. Jim's dad, his parents got divorced when they were real young, and his dad worked in the oil fields. Well, he actually went to South America after they got divorced and worked on these oil rigs. Well, we had heard a rumor right after Jim and I had been married that Rusty, which is Jim's dad, had gotten married in South America, and he had another family over there. Well, we had always teased Jim about his black brother, and he did not think that was funny at all. I mean, Jim did not think that was funny. Well, after his dad passed away, we actually did find records, but I don't know how you trace somebody in Brazil or wherever they're at. But so we were going through the genealogy in the book, and his family had slaves. Well, when they freed all the slaves, this black woman and her son actually stayed with them. And what they would do was, I don't know if they didn't have a last name or how it worked, but they took their last name. So this black woman's last name was Hankins, and then I guess it was Arbaugh. And then she had a son named Tim, and so they called him Nigger Tim. And that's actually what they called him his whole entire life. So we have just teased Jim about, we knew it was in your roots, And he just, no, it's not funny, but I'd like to. That's my goal. If I could figure out Jim's, half-siblings or whatever that are actually in South America, I would like to do that. Jim has no desire to find out about any of it.
Yeah.
But I don't even know his wife's name.
Wow.
He left him over there, and that was it. So, I don't know. But we've had a great time figuring those out and reading about them and fun stuff. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, and now I'll probably never leave here. At times I thought I wanted to, but I probably won't.
Well, what was it like raising a family here, especially with we've heard that the hours at the power plant were pretty demanding and pretty rigorous. What was that like?
Well, when I left, after Madison was born, actually, and it was awful. I didn't like it at all. I mean, especially being the mom. I mean, I'm sure different people have different perspectives, but Michaela was 2. I think she was just right at 2. She just turned 2 when I went to work out there. and I worked in the front office for a year, and I was going through a divorce. Well, I made $6.50 an hour. The UTs, which were the utility men out there that helped the mechanic, just handed them tools and did their jobs, they made $9.75 an hour. And they didn't have to have any special education at all. I mean, I had to be able to type and do all that other stuff, which isn't difficult, but it starts to wear on you when you're thinking, they're making this much money, much more money than I am, and I had to have skills to have my job. So I think I was young, and I think it was, I can do that. And my ex-husband didn't, his attitude was he wasn't going to help support me or anything else, and my dad raised us that you know how to change a flat tire on the car that you're driving, and you know how to check your oil and do all that stuff, and I think I just had the attitude that I can support myself and my daughter, so I bid out, which that was probably, looking back, it was tough. I'm not sure exactly how it worked, but I bid out and then worked in the scrubbers, which is the worst job out there, if you ask me, for a year. They have fly ash out there. Well, an initiation for some of those people out there is to be kind of ornery. If you stand in the fly ash and you get your feet wet, it burns. And I mean, it's pretty rough, and I can't tell you. I remember it happened once and it never happened again, but I worked out there for a year, and some of those guys were just awful. But I made some lifelong friends out there too. Then after that, I went to coal handling. I bid over there, and I met some of the best people I've ever met in my entire life. I still keep in contact with some of them. A lot of them have retired. They were a lot of older men. And then Maddie was born in 1996, and I was on a crew with 13 men. And most of them were like my dad's age. They were all old enough to be my dad. They had a baby shower for me at work. The men did. Absolutely awesome. Dave Walters, he's the commander in arms, commander in chief, something for the VFW now. He retired a few years ago. But Dave and Larry Yazzie, Steve Gerber, Bill Poole. I mean, they were awesome to me. I was never allowed to go anywhere by myself during the last trimester, and they never, to my knowledge, they never complained about having to go with me. They were wonderful. I wouldn't trade those things for anything. Harvey Kraft, he moved a few years ago, and they were just, I wouldn't trade those people. And to this day, I can see them, and it's like I saw him yesterday. And then Bill's wife committed suicide about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. And to go and see, usually when you go to funerals, there's a lot of women there. And when I walked into that funeral, I felt a certain amount of pride for the people, because I think it was probably 80% men, and they were the men that we worked with. And they were all there, and that camaraderie of, she was a different person anyway. A very kind person, but she took things such to heart, and people, it was just a different situation. But he would struggle with her, and they would have struggles, and over the years, and actually, unfortunately, it didn't come as a big surprise that she actually committed suicide. But just to see those men there and embracing him, and he still works out there, Bill does, and people are amazing how they just, and Bill's real open, he'll tell you what happened and everything, but just those friendships, and now his kids are having kids, and he's got grandkids, and we don't see each other every day, but those are friendships that will never, Harvey still emails me on a pretty regular basis. His mom passed away a couple of years ago, and Harvey's like 70, so his mom was quite an older lady. But to know you know, about their lives and stuff. And for them to still keep you in the loop. I mean, their grandkids and great-grandkids, and when he comes to town, he still finds us. He'll come over and eat with us or whatever, and it's just, I don't know. I wouldn't trade that for anything. The job's done. You get to know those people more than you know your families. You get to know about their families and their struggles, and you know, but I wouldn't trade them. I wouldn't trade any of them.
Yeah.
One of the guys we worked with, Elvin, big man, he died a few years ago. He died by himself, and to me that was just so sad. It just had his little dogs, but you know, I don't know, you just get to know them, and it's amazing what you find out about people, especially when you work a back shift, because part of the reason that you're there is just to make sure that things are going okay. I mean, it's not real difficult. It just bothered me being there and my family being at home. I think that was the worst part for me. Plus, we work 10-hour shifts, and we have to work that swing shift, and that was the worst for me, because the kids, the kids would come home from school. I was already gone, and then I came home and they were asleep. I'd get up for an hour or whatever in the morning with them, but then they were off to school again. But when I was pregnant with Madison, though, those guys out there took care of me. They make special arrangements, basically. You have to wear monitors and everything because of the radiation and all that good stuff, and they treated me good. They did. It just, God has a way of letting you know when it's your time to go, too, and I was glad I got out.
Were you the only woman that worked in your capacity at each of those jobs, being a scrubber, or?
No. Actually, there were quite a few women when I went. Actually...
So there wasn't as much of a gender divide as one might assume, then?
It's different because I actually kind of got to see it from both sides. When you're a single woman and then when you're a married woman. And unfortunately, you see a lot of partner swapping out there. And I'm thankful I didn't marry anybody from out there. Jim was not out there. I met him completely separately. But there's a lot of people that do. You're with people all the time, and then you eventually get married. But most of the women that I worked with were actually older than I was.
Oh, okay.
And so I don't know, they're kind of territorial in a way, and they're kind of difficult to get to know. And women, I don't know, there were Peggy and Kathy and Alicia. There was only four or five women that actually worked in coal handling, and they were pretty different. And one of them is a supervisor out there now. She's really a good gal. But you kind of have to prove yourself. You have to, and they kind of hold you to it, I guess, more than anything. But the women that I worked with, I have to say, they knew their jobs and they could pull their weight. And so it was never an issue. I mean, and I think it was kind of that attitude that we have to take care of each other, because you have to, don't let us down. You have to do what you have to do too, and we've worked hard to get where we are.
If you don't mind me asking, you don't have to answer this. Were you paid on an even scale with the men?
Yes.
Okay. So there was no.
No, you start as a journeyman in your thing, and then in your position, and then you have your kind of basic, what do I want to call it, step raises. And then there's a bunch of training. You have to do the training, and then you get to the testing levels and all of that. And as you progress through those, then you'll get to your journeyman level. And all of the women that I worked with, all of them reached journeyman level also, and I was. And we made good money. It was just a straight across scale. You made the same as the men. And I think the saddest part about it was Christmas and the holidays, because I saw a lot of I know that I did it too. A lot of us would, if you were divorced and your spouse had your kids or whatever, your ex-spouse or whatever, you'd work Christmas or Thanksgiving. And at first it really bothered me, but those were big paydays. We're union out there, you get paid 2.5 times your salary for a holiday out there. So if you work Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, you could pretty much give your kids a pretty darn good Christmas if you work those days. And there's people that wanted those days off, and somebody was always willing to trade. So that was nice. I mean, everybody kind of just, you know. And then as they got older, they wanted those days off too. And people would work with each other, and it was nice.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with some people that, I don't know, you always have the ones that don't do anything, you know, but you know they don't, and you don't figure, you just don't count on them, and off you go, you know. But, I don't know, it was an experience I'm glad that I had.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
I did daycare after that for 9 years. But I got to say, that was the hardest work I ever did.
Daycare harder than the power plant.
Yep. Yeah. A lot of physical at the power plant, but a lot of being responsible for other people's kids. That's, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And Jim and Madison, my youngest, they tried for years to talk me into quitting, and I wouldn't do it. And I think part of it was that you get attached to those little people.
Yeah.
But now I'm lucky because I got my grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
So I still like my daycare kids, and a lot of them still come and see me, and that's a good thing. But it's awesome to be the grandma.
Mm-hmm.
It's much better.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that's behind me.
Oh man, I just lost.
So you went from power plant to daycare, and then here? Was that your next step?
I worked. Actually, after the power plant, I went back to school.
Oh.
I got hurt at the power plant. I messed my back up big time.
Is that why you left?
So, yeah, that's why I left.
Okay.
And then I didn't have any skills to go back out. I had been a secretary before, so I went back to the community college and I took some classes and stuff, and then I actually went back to the power plant.
Mm-hmm.
I lost all my seniority and everything, but I went back to the office at the power plant and actually worked out there for a year. And I liked the job. I liked the people. It wasn't like that. But I had a little one at home. Maddie was in preschool. She was just getting ready to go to preschool. And the hours were early, so she had to go to daycare in the morning, then she had to go to daycare afterward.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was frustrated with the whole situation. Well, there was a job opening down at the district building, the school district building.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, what the heck, I'm going to apply for it. You have your summers off, you work the same hours as the kids go to school, you know, that kind of thing. And so I applied for the job, and that was the best thing I ever did.
Mm-hmm.
Not in terms of, the job was awesome, and the lady I worked for, class act all the way around. The other people, I could have probably walked away from that and everything else. And I left. I worked there for 2 years. And I can honestly tell you it was a personality conflict is the reason that I left. But the lady that I worked for is retired now. But she worked in the district office, and I was her secretary, Janet Bohart in Sheridan.
Mm-hmm.
That lady is, I'm very thankful that my path crossed hers, because I have never met anyone like her in my life. And I think more than anything, she taught me that you do the best that you can do with what you've got at the time. And her goal was always perfection. And if she couldn't reach perfection, we were just, you could touch it from where you were standing. She was that kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
We met every morning. She had a list. We talked about it, because I knew I wasn't going to see her again the rest of the day. She was that busy. And we were just always on the same page. Just awesome, awesome lady. And then when she retired, her husband took the job. And it was, I don't know what it was just, there was friction, and so I just went ahead and I left, and then shortly after that, I worked at the DA's office for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
My husband will tell you that I always thought I could save everybody. And when I went to work at the DA's office, I had wonderful intentions, but bottom line there was I was asked to lie about something, and I said that I wouldn't, and I got told that they were going to let me go, or they were either going to fire me or I could quit, so I quit.
Mhm.
But I'm not sorry about that.
Yeah.
We don't talk about it, but I'm not sorry that I did, because at the time, and it was important at that time in my life to be able to stand up for what I believed in, and I just said no. And I ended up testifying in a court case. The court case that they asked me to lie about, I got subpoenaed to that court shortly after that, about 6 months after that. And that was the hardest thing I've ever had to do.
Right.
Go in there and face the people that I worked with and have them call me a liar and say I was disgruntled. But I walked away with it, just knowing that I'd done the right thing.
Mm.
And then it was after that I thought, can't save people. Your husband beat you up and you go back. They arrest him, he beat you up, you go back. They arrest him. It's just one of those deals. And finally just thought, well, that it's obviously not what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And then I went to the vet one day with the dog,
Mm.
and there was a little gal in there. She had a baby. And this was the cutest baby I'd ever seen. She was a doll. And when I went out, the phone rang. So she left the office, and she came back in, and she says to the vet that I was talking to, she says, that was the daycare, and they said, I have to come and get her right now. She hasn't quit crying. So Julie, this little gal, she went out and got the baby from the babysitter and had to bring her back to work with her. Jim and I sat in the back office for an hour and a half and played with that little girl until they got off work. I don't know what it was about her. She just was like sunshine, that little girl. I mean, I fell head over heels for this little girl.
Mhm.
And about 3 weeks after that, I didn't have a job then. I was kind of just trying to decide what I wanted to do. She called me and she said, my daycare quit. I had never met this girl before.
Mm.
She says, my daycare quit. I'm trying to find one. And I was talking to another girl that she worked with. She said, she told me that you're not working right now. Would you be interested in watching her till I can find somebody? Well, I did it. And that was the beginning of the daycare for 9 years.
Oh,
Wow.
And I took her, Joey, and then I had the girl that I went to high school with, that I'm still friends with.
Right.
She had a little boy that was a few days, or I think there's like a week between Wesley and Joey, their birthdays, and she called and was needing daycare. So I had these two little guys that were a week apart, and they were 9 months old. So I'm watching these 9-month-olds, and I was just, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And it was, and so after that, and then I got licensed a few years back, and I loved it. It was great. You get to watch them grow up and do their things and become their own people, and then about a year before I quit, I took a little boy that was blind. And that puts a whole new perspective on things too. You find out what you're thankful for, and he is absolutely amazing. He is the most amazing little boy I've ever seen. And on top of that, he has the most amazing parents I've ever seen. They are, the husband has a huge family, comes from lots of brothers and sisters. Mom is an only child.
Oh.
So, yeah, it was quite the deal. And it wasn't anything that they did to cause it, but there was something that went wrong in the womb, and they didn't know if he'd ever be able to see. So he came, and he would crawl and all kinds of stuff, but I don't know, for some reason he didn't intimidate me. And I just loved him. Just awesome. And he made a difference in all of those little kids' lives. The way that they knew he couldn't see. We're talking 2, 3-year-olds here. Grab his hand and help him over the threshold to go outside. I mean, just to see those genuine, they're little kids. They're not faking anything. They're not trying to prove anything. And he would get excited, and he would shake his hands and his arms. And some of the older kids would look at him funny, but the big kids, or the little kids that were younger or about his age, they understood exactly, and they would laugh, and everybody would laugh, and they'd all clap, and it was amazing. those hugs and the, you know, the invitations to birthday parties and the, you know, we had one little girl that her parents both had to work on her birthday. The family didn't have a whole lot of money. So we went and we had a big birthday party for her at our house, all the daycare kids. And it was awesome. It was fantastic. And when I turned 40, and we really didn't go there a lot, but on my 40th birthday, Jill showed up with this huge cake. And the daycare kids, she brought balloons and everything, and they threw a birthday party for me. And that was really strange because that was the year my family forgot my birthday. And here she shows up with this huge cake, and all these little kids are just, they had more fun. It's your birthday, you know, it was great. It was, I will never forget that. That had to be probably the best birthday I've ever had.
Wow. Them
singing, and, you know, we laughed, and the jokes about them spitting on your birthday cake and everything else. There could have been spit for an inch on that cake, and I wouldn't have cared. They were so awesome. They helped me blow out the candles and just, you know, clapping, and it was amazing. That was worth every minute of it.
So you did enjoy it. It was just tough.
Parents, if you could. I always told Jim if he could make a tube that went from the sidewalk to the house, and you could just send the kids through the tube.
And not have to deal with
and not have to deal with the parents. You know, I don't know if...
That's what I've been told about teaching.
But you know, there'll be that one kid that you'll make the difference with. And I think that was a lot of... My granddaughter and my grandson both graduated from preschool at the end of the last school year. And the school district gets all together and they do like one big ceremony. Well, this little guy that I was talking about, Kelton, my little blind guy, he graduated from preschool also. Well, I'm not quiet, I'm sure you've noticed. And when he went up there, I was so excited because he actually did the same thing the other kids did and all of it. And I was, woo, yay, Kelton, you know. And I hear his mom. I hadn't seen her, but I hear her go, Kristi's back there. And we all laughed, you know, but it was just, it's amazing, you know.
Yeah.
And I said, I will never. And then when I finally had enough, though, I just said, I can't do it anymore. When you have to say to someone, you cannot bring your child back until you pay me, which I never did that, and I can honestly tell you I never did that, but that was where it was, and it was to that point where that's what was going to have to happen. And I said, I can't do it, and I knew I couldn't do it, so I quit. And I quit in May. I quit in May. We moved from a huge house, 2,800 square foot house, which there is only Jim and Maddie and I, into this little 800 square foot house. Because I said, I'm not going to change my mind. And I know myself. So we moved from the big house to the little house and started redoing the little house. And then this job was in the newspaper. And I had been in here just shortly before that. Jan had helped me. And I'm like, I want that job.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up here. And I love it. Talking to the people, and there's a lot of people I did not know, but they knew my family, and they tell me the coolest stories.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I love it.
Yeah.
I get to see all the cool stuff when they come.
When did you start here?
August last year.
Oh, just
August.
August.
Yeah,
almost a year.
almost a year. Yeah. So yeah, it's amazing. And Dan and Jan, I really have to say, and Mary Pat, talent that overflows. It's not fair that one person has that all.
Yeah.
And then...
It feels like a general consensus.
Yeah. And then Dan, I don't think he ever forgets anything, a face, or anything that somebody tells him like that. And Jan, I'm determined she should be a private investigator. And if you're buried somewhere around here, she's going to find you. That's how we actually started talking, Jan and I, because I was at the cemetery, and she was helping me with the cemetery in Mayville.
Yeah.
And so she led me in the right direction.
Wow.
And that's how and a lot of the information I got from here. That's how I found out a lot of the things. So, yeah, and then from there, it's like this bug, you catch it, and it's not going to go away.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So, and then I don't want to leave here, so it's a good fit, I guess.
Yeah.
Plus, I get to work part-time.
Yeah.
And my grandsons, my daughter works Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So Jim has the grandkids on Saturday, and he does whatever he wants, and then I have them the other 3. And it's best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Get to spend time with the babies, and then, well, they're not babies anymore. But
We'll always be babies, right?
But then you get to go and be a grown-up, and that was one of the things, too, that you just aren't, when you do daycare, you don't wear anything nice, because somebody's going to throw up on you, or wipe a booger on you, or whatever, you know, and then, so I get to do all that good stuff with the kids, and then get to come here and be a girl.
Yeah.
So,
Awesome.
That's really cool.
pretty cool.
Thanks for sharing all that.
My wonderful, exciting life.
Oh, good.
Well, I guess to close it all up, what do you think about Craig today and how it's developed over the years? And
I don't remember Craig being as political as it is now.
Oh, political. Because of clean energy?
That, and then I'm pro-coal all the way. I mean, I see the benefits. I worked out there. I know, these people saying, oh, well, you get this and you get that, and this is not a good thing. I worked out there. I was pregnant out there. They take every precaution. You're not going to get away from everything. This is our livelihood. We depend on that. And the thing that other people don't understand is they depend on it. And if they would research it, most of the electricity that's made here in Craig does not stay in Craig. California buys a lot of electricity from tri-state generation. And if you don't know those things, it's easy to have a closed mind. And Trapper, they get awards every year for the reclamation that they do up there. That's the thing that other outsiders don't see, I don't think, is we take care of our natural resources. We use them, but we also take care of them. And to see it from our point of view, the oil, I don't know much about that, but the coal, I was part of it. A lot of my friends, a lot of my, my family, as far as the younger generations, they work in those mines. That's our livelihood, They're safer today than they've ever been, and I just don't see the ill effects from it. We're going to have to get that energy from somewhere. This is proven to work. Why don't you guys figure out how to make it better, not try and shut it down. That's my attitude about it. As far as Craig itself, you always have your little cliques, I guess. But as I grow older, I know those people in those cliques instead of the way that it was when I was growing up. And sometimes that's kind of difficult. And of course, it's always easier to judge your neighbor than try and stand in his shoes. But I think for the most part, I've seen people over the last year, I've been real pleased about how that's worked personally. Some of the elections that have gone through, John Kincaid, he's a good man. I worked with him for many, many, many years. And during the elections, he beat out somebody that I thought had it hands down. And I like to see the change that people had, because I'd always heard that the other person was dishonest but never experienced it. But I had experienced John's honesty on my end. And so that was, I see good things, I think we have good and bad and everything. But I think as far as, I want to believe that everybody has our best interest at heart. And I can't imagine raising my kids anywhere else.
Right.
And I mean, where else can you go and drive down the street and see a deer and a doe and 2 fawns, walking down the street, or $6 sitting in somebody's flower garden? I mean, yeah, people get mad, but I can drive 10 minutes in any direction, and it's beautiful here. I mean, 30 minutes you can go to Elkhead and you can water ski. You go 45 minutes and you can go steamboat and you can go skiing. You can go fishing. I just don't see, you have to travel a little further to go shopping, but the internet is a wonderful thing. And I don't even do that anymore. You can find anything you need online, which is actually probably a good thing, but I don't know, I don't think that there's better. The community college has really evolved as far as they have the dental programs. They have power plant programs now that were not there when I was doing that.
Right.
But I mean, the education part of it, it's at our back door.
Mhm.
They have a nursing program that's just absolutely awesome. I have friends that have gone through it. And I just see, I see good positive things. My daughter's, my middle one works for the post office.
Mhm.
I mean, how can you beat that, you know? The other one works for the state. She's dispatcher at the state patrol.
Right,
You
right.
know, which I feel very fortunate that they both have good jobs.
Mhm.
You know, they take care of themselves. I don't know if I did as good a job as my dad did as far as their independence, but, you know, it's just, I think it's a good place. It's, you know, and if you want to hear it or you want to see it, it's all right here.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and then for me, I find something new every day. So, and getting to know the people. That's been my favorite part of this entire job.
Yeah.
And to hear the things that they have to say. It's, Mr. Visentiner has been a personal touchdown for me.
Mhm.
I really like him and the things that he tells me, and he reminds me a lot of what I think my grandfather would have been like if I'd ever got to talk to him.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Mhm.
Hopefully we're going in the right direction.
No, good.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Oh,